The snow fell heavily that night, painting the city streets white and making the air bite against anyone who dared to walk outside. At the edge of a marble staircase leading up to one of the tallest skyscrapers in town, a young homeless girl sat curled up, her small hands pressed against her chest for warmth. Her clothes were torn, her cheeks red from the cold, and her breath came out in trembling clouds. She looked up at the glowing golden letters above the skyscraper entrance, the name of one of the world's richest businessmen. The glass doors slid open, and through them stepped a tall figure wrapped in a luxurious coat. His shoes didn't even touch the snow long enough to get wet, his driver had laid out a path for him. The girl whispered, her voice cracking, "I'm freezing, please help." The billionaire froze mid-step. For a man used to boardrooms, flashing cameras, and powerful negotiations, he had never been stopped by a voice so fragile yet so desperate. He looked down at her, a child, trembling against the cold concrete, her eyes filled with fear and hope. For the first time in years, he didn't know what to say. The billionaire stood still, his expensive leather gloves tightening around the handle of his briefcase. His driver gave him a quick glance, silently urging him to keep moving. This was not unusual for him. Every day, he passed dozens of people asking for change, for food, for help. Normally, he ignored them. But tonight was different. The girl's voice had cracked like ice under pressure, and those words, "I'm freezing, please help," echoed in his ears louder than the constant buzzing of the stock market tickers that usually consumed his mind. He crouched down slowly, lowering himself so that his polished eyes met her tear-filled ones. "Where are your parents?" he asked softly, his tone carrying more gentleness than he expected from himself. The girl shook her head weakly. "Gone." The billionaire's chest tightened. He wasn't used to this kind of helpless honesty. Deals, contracts, and negotiations, those he understood. But this? A child alone in the snow? Behind him, the skyscraper lobby glowed warmly, filled with chandeliers, polished marble floors, and heated air. He suddenly felt the sting of the winter wind more sharply, realizing how cruel it must have been for her. For the first time in a long time, the man who thought he had everything felt utterly powerless. The billionaire's driver cleared his throat impatiently. "Sir, we're running late. The meeting upstairs won't wait forever." But the man didn't move. His eyes stayed locked on the girl, her lips trembling as if each breath might be her last. Something inside him stirred, a feeling buried under years of wealth, deals, and power. He set his briefcase down on the snowy step and removed one of his leather gloves. Slowly, he reached out his hand toward her. The girl flinched at first, then looked at him with wide, uncertain eyes. "It's warm inside," he said quietly. "Come with me." Her gaze darted between his hand and the glowing glass doors behind him. She hesitated, her fear clear. People had walked past her all day, some ignoring, some mocking, none offering real kindness. But this man, the one who seemed untouchable, the one whose name was known across the city, was kneeling in front of her, his hands steady and waiting. Her small fingers shook as she slowly reached out, brushing against his palm. The warmth of his skin against her icy hand made her gasp. The billionaire swallowed hard, realizing just how cold she truly was. Without another word, he helped her to her feet. As the billionaire helped the girl up, she wobbled unsteadily, her legs stiff from sitting in the freezing snow too long. He quickly steadied her, surprised by how light she felt in his arms. His driver shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, this isn't wise. People will start talking. The press." The billionaire cut him off with a sharp glance. "Let them talk." With that, he guided the girl toward the towering glass doors. As they entered, the sudden rush of warm air hit her face. She gasped softly, her frozen hands clinging tighter to his arm. Inside, the grand lobby sparkled with marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and golden railings. Wealth radiated from every corner. Guests in tailored suits and glittering dresses glanced their way, confusion flickering across their polished expressions. The girl's eyes widened. She had never seen anything like it, the warmth, the light, the sheer beauty of it all. For her, it was like stepping into another world. The billionaire noticed the stares, the whispers forming at the edges of the lobby. But he ignored them. For once, the opinions of others didn't matter. Looking down at the fragile child beside him, he felt something shift within himself, a sense that this moment would change far more than just her night. The receptionist at the marble desk straightened, her polished smile faltering when she saw the girl at the billionaire's side. "Sir, is everything all right?" she asked cautiously, her eyes flicking between his designer coat and the child's ragged clothes. "She's with me," the billionaire said firmly, leaving no room for questions. The girl's shoes squeaked faintly on the floor, leaving tiny drops of melted snow behind. She looked down, embarrassed, afraid of being scolded for dirtying such a perfect place. But instead of anger, the man gently placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Bring blankets to my office," he ordered the staff. "And hot food. Now." The receptionist blinked, startled, then hurried to obey. The girl's lips parted in disbelief. She whispered, almost too softly to hear, Why are you helping me?" The billionaire paused. For a moment, he had no answer. He had spent his life building towers of glass and steel, commanding respect with numbers and wealth. Yet here was a single question from a trembling child, and it cut deeper than any boardroom challenge. "Finally," he said, his voice quieter than usual, "because someone should have, long before me." They reached the private elevator, its golden doors reflecting their figures. The girl clung to his arm, still unsure if this was real or just a dream born from the cold. As the elevator ascended, the silence between them grew heavy. The billionaire glanced at her trembling hands and slipped off his scarf, wrapping it gently around her neck. She flinched at first, then buried her face in the fabric, sighing at the sudden warmth. "You'll be safe now," he murmured, almost as if reassuring himself. When the doors opened, they stepped into his office, a vast space with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the glowing city below. Normally, he took pride in this view, a symbol of his empire. But tonight, he barely noticed it. His attention was fixed on the girl standing in awe, her eyes wide at the sight of the endless skyline. Within minutes, staff rushed in with blankets and trays of food. The billionaire waved them out quickly, not wanting her to feel like a spectacle. He draped the blankets around her shoulders and set the steaming plate in front of her. She hesitated, staring at the food, then looked up at him. "Is this, really for me?" He nodded. "All of it. Eat." Her hands shook as she picked up the spoon. Tears welled in her eyes, not from the cold this time, but from something she hadn't felt in a long while, kindness. The girl ate slowly at first, as though afraid the food might vanish if she moved too quickly. The billionaire sat across from her, watching in silence. Every bite she took seemed to weigh heavier on his heart, not because she ate greedily, but because she ate like someone who hadn't been cared for in far too long. When she finally set the spoon down, her small voice broke the quiet. "Why me? You could have walked away, everyone else did." The billionaire leaned back in his chair, his gaze drifting to the city lights below. His life had been filled with power, negotiations, and wealth, yet at that moment, none of it mattered. "Because I was like you once," he admitted softly. Her eyes widened. "You?" He nodded. "Not homeless, but forgotten. Left behind when no one believed in me. I swore I'd never feel that way again. And I swore I'd never let someone else feel it either, if I had the chance to stop it." The girl clutched the blanket tighter around herself. For the first time, she felt not just warmer, but safer. The billionaire's voice lowered. "Tonight reminded me of something I forgot a long time ago. Money can build towers, but it can't erase the cold in someone's eyes." The girl's eyes lingered on him, searching his face as though trying to decide if he was telling the truth. Finally, she whispered, "So, what happens to me now?" The billionaire paused. That question carried more weight than she realized. He could send her to a shelter, sign a check, and move on with his life as he always did. But deep down, he knew this wasn't one of those problems that money alone could solve. "You don't have to go back out there," he said firmly. "Not tonight. Not ever again, if you'll trust me." Her lips trembled. Trust. It was a word she hadn't dared to believe in for a long time. Yet sitting there, wrapped in warmth and finally full, she wanted to believe him. He leaned forward. "I can help you. Not just with food and clothes, but with a future. You deserve that much." The girl blinked back tears, unsure whether to cry or smile. "You really mean that?" For once, the billionaire didn't answer with polished words or rehearsed lines. He simply reached across the table, covering her small hand with his. "Yes," he said. "I do." In that moment, the silence between them wasn't heavy anymore. It was hopeful. The storm outside howled against the skyscraper windows, but inside, the office felt like a sanctuary. The girl pulled the blanket tighter and leaned back in her chair, her eyes heavy but calmer than before. The billionaire rose and walked toward the window. The city stretched endlessly below him, its lights glittering like stars. For years, that view had been his symbol of triumph. Tonight, it looked different, smaller, almost meaningless compared to the child sitting quietly behind him. He turned back and said, "Tomorrow, we'll get you new clothes, a place to stay, and someone to make sure you're taken care of properly." The girl frowned slightly, her voice fragile. "And you? Will you just leave me after that?" The question struck him harder than any business rival ever had. For a man who built his empire on detachment, it shocked him how much those words hurt. "No," he said after a pause. "Not if you don't want me to." Her eyes softened, and for the first time, a small smile crept across her face. It was faint, uncertain, but real. The billionaire felt something he hadn't in years, not pride, not victory, but purpose. The girl's smile faded as quickly as it appeared, replaced by a worried look. "What if I'm just a burden to you?" she asked softly, her voice almost breaking. The billionaire walked back to her side and knelt so they were eye level. His tone carried no hesitation. "Listen to me. You are not a burden. You are a child who deserves care, safety, and a chance to grow. If anyone ever made you believe otherwise, they were wrong." Her eyes filled with tears, but this time they weren't from cold or fear, they were from the weight lifting off her shoulders. He gently placed his hand on the blanket wrapped around her. "I've spent my life chasing numbers and power, thinking that was enough. But tonight, you reminded me of something far greater. Humanity. Compassion. That's what truly matters." The girl swallowed hard, her voice trembling. "No one's ever said that to me before." The billionaire gave her a faint, reassuring smile. "Then let this be the first of many times you'll hear it." For a long moment, they simply looked at each other, a man who thought he had everything, and a girl who had nothing. Yet somehow, they both realized they had given each other something priceless. The night grew quieter as the storm outside began to ease. The girl, warm and full for the first time in days, rested against the chair, her eyelids heavy with exhaustion. The billionaire noticed and softened his tone. "You should sleep. You're safe here." She blinked up at him, uncertain. "Safe, really?" He nodded firmly. "Yes. No one will hurt you here. Not while I'm around." Slowly, she allowed herself to trust his words. Curling up under the blanket, she whispered, "Thank you." Within minutes, she drifted into a deep sleep, her breathing steady and peaceful. The billionaire stood silently, watching her. Something in his chest tightened, a mixture of sorrow for what she had endured and a fierce determination to protect her from it ever again. He turned back toward the glowing skyline, but it no longer dazzled him the way it once had. The towers and lights seemed hollow compared to the fragile child asleep in his office. For the first time in years, he felt that all his wealth and power meant nothing unless it could be used for something good. Something human. And in that moment, he knew, this encounter wasn't an accident. It was a turning point. Morning light spilled through the massive glass windows, bathing the office in gold. The girl stirred, rubbing her eyes as the warmth of the sun replaced the chill of the night before. For a moment, she looked confused, as if waking from a dream. Then her gaze settled on the billionaire, seated nearby with a quiet cup of coffee, watching over her. "You stayed," she whispered, surprised. He set the cup down and smiled faintly. "Of course I did." She sat up, the blanket still wrapped around her shoulders. For the first time in what felt like forever, she wasn't shivering. She wasn't hungry. She wasn't alone. "What will happen to me now?" she asked, her voice small but steadier than before. The billionaire leaned forward, his expression firm yet kind. "What will happen is this: you'll never spend another night in the cold again. You'll have a home, food, school, and a future. I'll make sure of it." Her eyes welled with tears, but this time they shone with relief. She nodded slowly, almost afraid to believe him, yet his voice carried a weight that told her it was real. He stood, offering his hand once more, the same way he had the night before. "Ready?" She hesitated only a moment before slipping her small hand into his. And as they walked out of that office together, the billionaire realized that she hadn't just found hope that night, he had, too.